Hello, this is Mark Warawath. I wanted to spend a few moments talking about how to deliver a compelling business pitch. I've been coaching teams on Nuvention now for more than 10 years. This is some accumulated wisdom, certainly not all, on how to do a compelling business pitch. In essence, targeting investors based on a new business model or a new business concept, typically revolving around a new value proposition. So as we get started, let's talk about why pitching is so important, first of all. I'm going to start with the CEO. The CEO really has only three jobs in a startup, right? One is to create and or maintain the vision of the company. So this has to be articulated somewhere. One way to do that, of course, is the business pitch. The second role is to hire a strong team of employees and advisors. And thirdly is to fund the company properly and consistently. The pitch actually helps you achieve all three. So employees and advisors might be compelled by your pitch as well as investors. So I think it's important to have a comprehensive pitch that's concise, that's clean, that's well rehearsed, and that's something you can deliver virtually at a moment's notice, as well as something that is investable, right? Fundable, as the investors like to say. And it's not just the company and the pitch, but in many ways, fundability goes to you, the CEO. So you have to come across as being eminently fundable, right? Pitching helps you get funding, but helps you with all three. So keep that in mind. There are many millions of dollars of funds available that are non-dilutive for startups that basically are delivered and awarded based on your ability to pitch, the quality of the pitch, as well as how compelling it is. And I'd hate to say that much of that money goes unawarded because there aren't enough compelling business plans and pitches out there to support it. Your presentation is a reflection of your story. It's a knowledge journey. It's a quest that you invite your audience to participate in. So you're bringing them into your world for a few minutes. It's a chance to respect your audience and make an ask. So the best pitches, especially in front of investors, finish with an ask. What is the ask at the end, right? It is not a chance to show off how smart you are. If you're trying to overwhelm your audience, that'll work against you because the more confused they are, the more turned off they're going to be. So you have to make your presentation crisp, clear, understandable at all levels of education. Let's start with 7th or 8th grade on up. So this is not demeaning your audience. This is just recognizing you have a diverse set of backgrounds in your audience. So the rule of thumb I like to follow is if you can explain it to your grandma without having to re-explain it or do it multiple times, if she can understand it, assuming she's not a scientist, then maybe your audience should be able to understand it. You don't want to demean them, you don't want to insult them, but you do want them to get the first time what your product is, what the problem is that you're solving, and what's your value proposition. It's not a chance to test your audience's knowledge. So you're not up there to embarrass them. You're not up there to see what they remember from high school chemistry, okay? It's also not a commentary or an editorial. There's plenty of social media sites for that. If you want to make a political statement, go ahead. Just don't do it in your pitch, please, because you have no idea where your audience is coming from, and you're trying to appeal to them on a level of investment, not a level of understanding necessarily your political point of view. The quest for opportunity, right? People are attracted to quests. They want to see that you have an endeavor, a goal, some sort of, investment that you're trying to make. They can become quite committed, even obsessive about them. So your journey might be a one towards, clean energy, zero emitted, fossil fuel waste gases, carbon neutrality, all sorts of things that you could be shooting for in various applications. Bring your audience with you, pull them into that quest that, you might be climbing that mountain. You've got to get them to climb that mountain, at least for those 8 to 10 minutes with you, right? So what's the hook, right? The hook is a phrase or statement that gives people a reason to listen to you at all. So you need to get that hook in there, usually in the first 20 to 30 seconds. You have maybe even less time than that, but you have to basically get them to stay with you till the end, engage in that quest with you for at least a little while, and it gives purpose to your talk. It frames your talk. It gets them to listen. So find that hook, right? Maybe it's a statement that says 70% of the water in the city of Chicago has elevated lead, right? And, this is the water that our children are drinking every day. So find that hook, find something in there that's going to be compelling to your audience, right? Scalability. We're going to talk about a 15-minute or even a 10-minute format, but it needs to scale down to as little as, say, 1 to 2 minutes, right? So 1 minute would be an elevator pitch. You're in an elevator with, who knows, a CEO of a competitor. It could be a CEO of an investor, an investment firm like a VC. It could be a supplier. It could be a customer, right? And your ability to summarize your business in less than 60 seconds may turn out very handy depending on who's in that elevator with you, right? So it's got to be flexible, right? You should be able to give this whether you have PowerPoints or not, with or without a deck, with or without visual aids, with or without your team surrounding you. So when I talked about fundable CEOs, I'm talking about those that have that kind of confidence to speak to virtually any kind of audience under virtually any kind of time constraint, with or without those aids. I know that's tough. I'm sorry that's such a high bar, but I guess I'm just trying to be realistic here. I don't expect you in 10 weeks to get there, but at least in 10 weeks, I'm hoping you can get to a compelling 8 to 10 minute format, as well as a compelling 1 to 2 minute elevator pitch. With the longer one, you will have your team around you and you will have slides. So you don't have to necessarily sing a cappella for that one. You can certainly rely on those aids for the final pitch. The structure, right? We're going to be allocating 20 minutes, half of which is Q&A. So your ability and agility at Q&A is just as important as your pitch, right? Your pitch is well rehearsed. Your pitch is structured. Your pitch is selective in terms of what you're sharing. The audience understands that, they get that, and what they're basically going to do is ask you questions that are maybe a little bit off script. So the first thing you got to have is backup slides, and then you have to have them indexed at least mentally so you know where to go under every possible question, right? The best pitches are not ending after those 8 to 10 minutes. Your best pitch has to span the 20 to include all types of Q&A, right? And I've heard all sorts of crazy questions that are going to seem to you like they're out of left field. For example, how much income are the funders or the founders expecting to take in the first few years, right? It's a trick question because if you say, I expect a full salary, that's going to be too much. If you say, I'm going to take nothing and eat macaroni and cheese and live in the streets, that's not acceptable either. You need to have something in between that says you're kind of investing in the business, right? And as long as the business has some cash coming in, you're going to need some of it to stay alive. And I think investors get that, right? It's going to be a diverse group. And when we have our advisory board, at least for energy, you'll see energy entrepreneurs, VCs, angels, utilities, technologists, consultants, and fellow students, right? Anticipate questions from all those different perspectives. There's often a discovery in your pitch. This is kind of the highlight. This is what gets people to stay tuned even after that hook, right? So, I mean, if the hook gets them excited at the beginning, it's the discovery that keeps them engaged throughout the rest of the pitch, right? What is that discovery? Don't let them hanging, right? If you've done enough interviews, if you've done enough research, you should have some kind of discovery, right? Whether it's an unmet need, an unfulfilled opportunity, an enhanced value proposition over the current offerings, some sort of market inefficiency, waste in the system, additional value that can be extracted. These are all examples of quote unquote discoveries, and you need to have some sort of tangible proof. You either heard it from the interviews, you saw it in the data, you extracted it from various sources, but that discovery, right, is what the investors are going to lean in for, right? They're probably, if they're smart, going to take a few notes and say, aha, I heard something new. Remember, these VC maybe hear 100 pitches a month, right? Yes, you are one more, but it's your discovery and your hook that's going to keep them engaged or potentially disengaged, right? So here's the format. Starts with problem and solution. We're going to call it a quantified value proposition. So it's not enough to say we're better. How much better? We're faster. How much faster? We're easier to use. How much easier to use, right? Discuss basically the business opportunity and what model you're going to follow. How are you going to extract? How are you going to monetize this situation? How do you extract this need how do you convert the need into a revenue stream for your company, right? What's your advantage? I mean, yes, every one of us can open up a lemonade stand, but in the end, unless we have top secret lemonades or lemons, we're not going to be able to stay in business, because each one of us can undercut the other, and basically it becomes a race to the bottom, right? So you have to have some kind of competitive advantage. When they ask you this question, the best answer is we have a patent, we have a trademark, we have a copyright, we have some kind of legal protection. It could be a trade secret, it could be some way of protecting your IP. But if you have no IP, if your only idea is we're going to do exactly what everyone else is doing, yet one more coffee shop, if you will, then you're probably not going to prevail, right? Because you need some way to compete in the long run so that others won't undercut you and put you out of business, right? It's important to lay out some of the challenges and risks, right? Not everything is rosy and hunky-dory. Next steps, right? What do you need to do beyond the work you've already done? How would you lay that out? Introductions are interesting. I've seen introductions at the beginning. I've seen it at the end. They both are effective. It kind of depends on your style, and whether or not you want to be kind of market focused first and then team focused last, which I think is generally a pretty good principle. And then embedded in there is the ask. So the next steps kind of lead to the ask, right? If we need to go do X, Y, and Z, what kind of money do you need to do that, right? We need another $100,000 to build out a prototype. We need $50,000 to get initial inventory. We need $75,000 to do these various tests of the technology or the market, right? So problem and solution, this is the first bullet, I guess, right? Keep that to 2 minutes. Start with a 30-second summary of your business, right? Discuss the problem, best told via some sort of story, case study, or role play. You know, why is this a problem, right? How do you intend to solve this need? Describe your minimum viable product. Describe your solution, right? How are you going to address this need? And why is your solution better than the current alternatives? You should be able to extract this into a worldwide case. And what do I mean by that? If you're going to save, I don't know, 5 gallons of gasoline per month for my car, and that's your value proposition because you're going to make it more efficient. Well, how many people have cars like mine? Let's say there's 100 million cars like mine in the world. Okay, great. What does that mean to the world in terms of how many gallons of fuel, how many, how much CO2 would not be emitted as a result? So extrapolate from the small case, if you will, to the worldwide case, okay? And those are just some examples there of being stuck in traffic and what traffic delays mean, right? Extrapolate the solution, right? If you can save 20 minutes on the road every day, what does that mean if you've got 500 million cars that are saving 20 minutes a day? So extrapolation is a very important tool. Sometimes saving 20 minutes means nothing, but if you're saving thousands and thousands of hours a year, right, across the board, across the country, that is meaningful, right? You can convert that to dollars and say it's worth this much money in the marketplace. Okay, what's your quantified value proposition? Again, 2-minute max here. Start with, instead of the problem, solution. So you could swap these in terms of sequence. Why is the customer hiring you, right? Why would they pick you over your competition? Do this from your customer perspective, not necessarily your own. Address the value prop for only the first 1 or 2 beachhead customers, right? Why is that? In this format, you're not going to have time to talk about every market under the sun. Your beachhead reflects really your highest likelihood of success, your initial market, where you can establish your brand, establish your solution, and start to change behaviors in the most likely to succeed market. Okay, this is up to you to choose, but you don't get too many beachheads, right? I mean, if you fail at the first 1 or 2, you may not get a 3rd or 4th chance, right? So make sure you're picking the most likely to succeed. Highlight the insights from your market research, right? What did those people tell you in those interviews? Believe it or not, your audience is interested in that. So hopefully as you do your interviews, you're taking copious notes, you're capturing verbatims, and you're able to trace it back. This person said X, Y, Z on this date, and this is who they are. This is why they're important, okay? Lastly, what's the techno-economic model, right? So when does this solution become cost competitive in the vast array of different technological solutions that are out there? When does this break even against those those competitors, okay? And that's a technology discussion. So when does ethanol replace gasoline, right? When does solar panels replace coal, right? These are the techno-economic questions, and it may require understanding some exogenous variables, like what's the price of corn, or what is the current price of solar panels coming out of China. So understand those things, understand those exogenous variables that might impact your techno-economic model. Your business opportunity, right? How big is the opportunity? What's the market size? How is it segmented? What are the key trends that are impacting your market? What's the growth rate, revenue sources? You know, who's your customer? Who's going to write checks to you, right? What's your business model? Is it going to be a subscription model? Is it going to be a product purchase? Is it a lease? Is it some sort of sharing model? There's all sorts of different models for going to market. So understand which one makes the most sense. Hopefully it's something you have tested, right? What's driving your costs, right? What are your cost drivers, the structure of that? Look at what investment might be needed, upfront cash, how long will it last? How many phases will it take you to? And you need to commit to at least one business model going for the rest of the analysis here, because otherwise, if you don't have that business model, you can't do your income statement. So I know there might be multiples, but pick the most likely to succeed. Again, competitive advantage. Why are you the better choice? Who are your key competitors? How would you compare to them? And when you do that comparison, you have to carefully select those attributes that are decision attributes from the market's perspective. So again, this is something you learned. They're interested in speed. They're interested in reliability. Whatever it is they're interested in, quantify it, do a characterization of your competitors, and then look at your own solution, right? What moats have you built around your business, right? How are you protecting yourself from your competitors? How quickly can your competitors copy what you've done, right? Highlight prospective customer interviews here. So again, verbatims are a great way to go. I mean, audiences love verbatims, right? Challenges and risks, highlight no more than a couple, maybe 2 or 3. What dependencies you might have externally or with technologies, and then who is going to be on your team. What's your execution plan, and how are you going to get there, right? Next steps, you can include your ask here, right? What would you do if you were to continue beyond this class? How would you pursue this? Who's on board? Who's not on board? How many of your team will transition to the business? And then what's your action plan, maybe for the next 3 to 6 months? Some common pitfalls, right? Don't do what I'm doing. Don't read your slides, right? Interpret them. So slides can often be too busy. Don't put too much content on there. Lots of hesitation, mumbling, and awkward pauses. Try to avoid that. Try to avoid too many slides. 1 to 2 minutes per slide is about the right cadence, right? I've seen students who are not interested in their own presentation. And if you're not interested, how is anyone else going to be interested? So you have to show some passion there. You have to make it compelling, at least to yourself, and then hopefully it'll be contagious to the audience, right? Don't come across as desperate. Don't come across as you're begging, right? Or that you're not confident, meaning that you're unsure of too many things, as if to say you don't even think you should be up there. So don't complicate things, right? Simplify, right? There's often a better, more simple way to describe your solution and the problem and your business model, right? Try to understand your audience. Don't misunderstand them, right? Try to discover who's in that audience before you get there, right? So if they're all PhDs in chemistry, that's going to be very different from venture capitalists from Silicon Valley, right? Not everyone is a potential investor. However, you may have potential collaborators and customers, as well as potential employees, early stage, right? And maybe even suppliers, right? Try to answer all the potential questions in your presentation. Have an appendix at the end, right? A series of slides that you can jump to at a moment's notice, and because they're indexed in your mind, you can jump to it very quickly and say, I've got that in Appendix C or Appendix D, here you go, right? A lot of your income statements will probably wind up in your appendix. I don't think a detailed income statement is necessarily a compelling thing for an audience, but you can maybe summarize the output of that income statement or even your balance sheet in your main presentation. Keep the details in your backup. Okay, lastly, make sure to practice, right? So get it into the time frame. If you're going to have multiple presenters, which is okay, but try not to have more than 2 or 3, because if you have a lot of transitions, it can be confusing and it can really slow things down. So 2 or 3 of your best presenters should be presenting, right? Try to give students on your team a chance to practice with you, and maybe rotate them from session to session to see who improves the best and who's your best presenters in the long run. This is the kind of score sheet we would use when we bring in guest judges, if you will. And then from there, understand your positioning statement. In essence, what is your solution and how does it fit into the bigger picture, right? So with that, I'm going to say, if you have any other questions, please bring them up in class or send them to me by email, and we will certainly be glad to answer it there. Hopefully this was valuable, and we'll stop at that point. Thank you.